On December 14th, 2023, a group of veterans walked into a courthouse in Los Angeles in the case of Powers versus McDonough. It's a class action suit in which veterans with disabilities are suing the government so they can have access to housing. For them, walking through these doors was an important step in a long journey, but before we get into that, I want to start with him, because this story centers around Rob.
My name's Rob Reynolds. I served in the U.S. Army Infantry from 2006 to 2010, and I was in Iraq in 2007. I'm originally from Western Massachusetts. Yeah, so I served with the 10th Mountain Division, 431 Infantry, and we were in Southwest Baghdad in 2007. It was kind of a rough time in Iraq. A lot of the deaths were from IEDs, dismounted IEDs. When I got back from Iraq, I came to California, and I was working with CAL FIRE, the state fire department. Started self-medicating, just went down a really dark road. And that's when I was referred to go to the West Los Angeles VA.
The VA was first established after World War I to coordinate services provided to veterans, from pensions to healthcare to housing. I know a few things about the VA because that's me. I'm an Army veteran who lives in Los Angeles and served in both the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. And like Rob and so many other veterans, we rely on the VA for services and support. The West LA VA is one of the largest veteran campuses in the country, a place where service members should be able to get all the help they need. During the Great Depression, development on the property surged, with buildings sprouting out to provide housing and modern medical care to veterans. An influx of veterans after World War II caused the West LA VA's population to swell to over 5,000 residents. The sheer size of the grounds is impressive. There's a sprawling hospital, a lot of office buildings, large green spaces, and it's also confusing because there's a golf course here, a pristine baseball field for a major university, and a private school's athletic facility. There's also a lot of dilapidated buildings that used to house vets, but they don't today. And that's where Rob comes in. I first met him in early 2023 when I began to document this situation. Rob is a leader on a mission. I'll let him explain.
You know, the West LA VA is 388 acres of land, which is enormous. It's right next to Brentwood, Bel Air, Beverly Hills, Westwood, Santa Monica, very, very affluent areas. That land is, you know, in some people's eyes, some of the most expensive real estate in the country. And when I arrived at the VA with my service animal that I got from a vet center in Central California, the VA said, you can't come in with the dog. And at that time, I was like, well, where do I go this evening? And they're like, well, you know, there's nowhere you can go this evening. So that night, I walked out of the hospital, I had my backpack, my dog, and I walked down Wilshire Boulevard. And when I got to the corner of San Vicente, I ran into a Marine veteran, and he jokingly said to me, you know, what did they tell you no for?
So that night, Rob slept on the street. And that's how he discovered Veterans Row. Veterans Row was basically a long row of tents set up on San Vicente Boulevard, right next to sushi restaurants, high-end shopping, and 4 rows of heavy traffic.
Everything that I'd seen happen out on San Vicente Boulevard, where all these veterans were sleeping, and a couple of them died, and no one was checking on them. Police would come through, throw away all their stuff, displace them, then they would come back, and there was no outreach from the VA, and it was just, I just couldn't understand what was going on.
Why would homeless veterans, dozens of them, be sleeping on the sidewalk outside of the VA grounds when inside of the campus there was plenty of land to spare that could be developed into housing and apartments? When Rob told me that story, it was so unbelievable, I felt I needed to talk to other veterans.
I'm an Air Force veteran, and I get to live in the apartments on campus. I have a beautiful view of the ocean. He lost his leg in Iraq, saving another veteran, in Afghanistan, another soldier that stepped on an IED. And in response to that, he stepped on an IED, but now the VA won't let him live on campus. So he gets to be homeless on the streets of LA.
I was denied services because I make too much money off the disability I get from the VA. Well, they raised the AMI, but he's still on the rate where he makes too much money for it, and he's got one fucking leg.
The VA is using the traditional affordable housing model,
And the way that works is these private developers have to go out and solicit funds to build and reconstruct the buildings. And where they get those funds, they come with restrictions on how much income someone can have, which is a good thing if you're building housing for regular homelessness. But when it comes to veterans, they get disability compensation for their injuries. So a lot of times the compensation they get for disability will then put them over the limit and they won't be eligible for housing. The more disabled they are, the less eligible they are for housing, which is insane.
So it's the opposite of what you need, yeah.
Anywhere else in the VA system, the higher your disability, the more benefits you get. So then in this case, it's the opposite.
You might be thinking, whoa, wait. These vets are getting paid disability by the government, so why aren't they spending that on rent? Well, if you ask that question, then you don't know Los Angeles very well. Housing insecurity is the #1 issue in LA due to the exorbitant cost of living for both civilians and veterans. And that's why 14 veterans are currently suing the VA over land that was donated to the federal government specifically to maintain housing for disabled veterans. And if that wasn't enough, this isn't the first time that vets have brought the VA to court over this.
There was a lawsuit that was filed in 2011 by the ACLU, and they filed a lawsuit on behalf of homeless and disabled veterans against the VA for discrimination and also for illegally leasing out portions of this land that's supposed to be used for housing. And at that time, there was no permanent housing on the property. There used to be 4,000 veterans living there, and now there's no permanent housing, a bunch of illegal leases, and roughly the same number of veterans that used to live on that property are now homeless in Los Angeles.
This building right here, it used to be a trolley station that used to take veterans down to the beach so they could enjoy the day at the beach. Right now, that location is an empty parking lot for the city of Santa Monica.
So the director of one of the largest VAs in the nation, where veteran homelessness is running rampant, is more concerned about UCLA getting a baseball stadium than helping homeless veterans that are dying out on the, right outside their gate.
I think we're talking about UCLA's lease baseball. Is that?
Our advocates who are a little testy out there are gonna get up in arms when they see that there's another ball field being built. So this will get out ahead of us if we don't get moving on it quickly.
While all the veterans were sleeping out on the street, that baseball stadium was constructed essentially in their face. The land has been taken advantage of for decades. Ralph Tillman and Richard Scott, VA contract officer and parking lot operator, were arrested by the FBI for defrauding $13 million out of one of those parking lots.
Wow. It's true. For almost 17 years, Scott, a parking lot operator whose lots were on the VA land, defrauded the VA out of $13 million from leases on the property. Tillman, a contract officer at the VA, took almost $300,000 as an accomplice in the scheme.
Every time I think about it, just a big pit in my stomach. When the did I deposit that money?
I know, Ralph, I'm speechless. I mean, you know, I'm in the mood to be on the news, so to speak, and all that comes with that.
And while Scott spent his millions on luxury condos and expensive cars for himself, veterans continued to sleep on the streets. Meanwhile, that 2011 lawsuit that Rob was talking about, well, it got settled in 2015, with both sides agreeing to develop a master plan to build more housing. But construction has moved glacially slow, and buildings remain empty.
Everybody wants a little tiny piece of the land. This VA is for everyone but the veteran.
I first came to this VA back in 2011, 2012. But it wasn't the first time that I'd been homeless out on that street. There were other times where I slept in cars for a couple months out there, and I knew that there was something going on here. Like, this is like unique. This isn't, like, it's probably never gonna happen again. I mean, if we can keep going with what we're going and get these apartments built and get the veterans back on this property, then yeah.
When we met Josh this day, he had just been denied housing on campus and was meeting up with other veterans in similar situations.
Uh-oh, Featherston. That's my buddy Derek. What's up, buddy?
There went the neighborhood.
There went the neighborhood. 211 Bravos in one place. What are we gonna do? Let's break some stuff.
When we were talking to Josh, I met Derek, a big guy with a heart of gold, kind of like a big teddy bear. He was just grateful to be able to have a place to sleep at night. He described what the buildings on the VA campus looked like.
When I got here, the cars in this parking lot had been there for so long that grass was growing up around me. Yeah, there was like barely anybody occupying the building. Like, I used to go for bike rides and see like silhouettes in the window sills of buildings that were shut down. Ghosts and shit like that. Like, the land is like haunted. It's really cool. I was still in my tent and I had a whole bunch of shit in it. And I remember they were like, "Are you willing to move into one of these tiny homes?" And I was like, I just looked at the sky, I did a little prayed, and I was like, "Oh, should I?" And they said, "Yeah," so.
What he described as tiny homes is actually CTRS, short for Care, Treatment, and Rehabilitative Services. This VA program, consisting of more than 100 tiny shelters, was announced only 2 weeks after the stabbing death of a disabled vet on Veterans Row. Tiny homes was just a Band-Aid, a temporary way the VA could shelter veterans until the campus permanent housing was completed and built. But construction has been chronically delayed and behind schedule for almost a decade. Derek describes living in CTRS.
I when I moved into the tiny home, I like it because, like, they feed you, they have laundry services, they have showers, they have toilets, they sit on toilets.
Compared to Tent City,
Compared to Tent City, this place is like a 10-star restaurant or 10-star like resort.
Every year, the VA has a Thanksgiving meal, and Rob is one of its organizers. What I notice is that veterans were helping other veterans, helping them figure out where to get services, how to navigate the system, and that's how Rob's become a leader. In fact, some of the veterans that worked at the VA were veterans that Rob helped get off the street or recruited to help give back at the VA.
I'm a disabled veteran myself. I was in the Army, 13 Bravo, Field Artillery. Joined the Army when I was 17. When the Twin Towers went down, I was in the Army and still 17. And this is the kind of food we provide to the unserved, unhoused. Anybody can do sandwiches, anybody can do potato chips, anybody can do chicken and tamales. No shots at that, but I've been vegan my whole life. I clearly understand how food is either poison or it's medicine, and there's no middle ground. So those who need it the most will get the most. And the Bible says, those who be first will be last, those who last will be first.
Come on, let me get one. Hold on, let me get one.
Come on now.
Perfect.
They look good, they fit?
Yeah, they fit. I'm talking about. Look, I got that much room. That much room to spend.
They look good.
I won't do no walking in these. I'm gonna ride in these. Come on, sir.
Well, I've had a plate here, and I've had a sister, Bob. Now we'll see what they got inside.
I was struggling with drug addiction, mental health issues, and in the Marine Corps, I was an administrative clerk. So when I identified with a lieutenant, I saw him right away, and that was Rob Reynolds.
If I didn't say it before, Rob hates to be on camera. Not because of vanity, but because everything he does is based on trust. He wanted to make sure we weren't going to be exploiting the veterans we met on the street, because they've been exploited multiple times before. Politicians, influencers, government leaders, they'd come down for a photo op and then were never seen from again. And when it came down to helping veterans get off the street, they told us it was Rob they came to for help. Mario talks about his first encounter with Rob.
I was starving. I needed a piece of bread, and he gave me my first piece of bread on San Vicente, and he showed me where the rest of the food is at, and then from there, the rest is history. Rob didn't hold back. He didn't hold back. He understood the the severity of my homelessness and my mental health conditions, and every lead that he gave me was solid. There wasn't a passing of the buck. There was a service being provided, and there was an effective communication piece to it.
Behind the Department of Defense, the VA is the second largest department in the entire federal government, with over 400,000 employees. When the veterans were in crisis and in need of help, it was Rob, a volunteer and fellow veteran, who they called.
Coming from homeless from the streets in prison, there's no trust. You know what I mean? Vulnerability and patience isn't a part of that. So now I'm a peer support, and I help the veterans navigate through the healthcare system, and I'm a role model and example, and I show them that they too can overcome homelessness and drug addiction. So
Mario's considered a success story, going from the streets to helping other homeless veterans at the VA. Vets like Robert.
I served in the United States Air Force during 9/11. I got out of the military, and in 2008, as the housing crisis was happening, I was living in my car and I was having a hard time finding a job. I started going to the VA, just to get assistance and help, and they wouldn't help me.
Robert shared his frustration with nonprofits that were tasked with tackling homelessness, organizations that have received millions in funding. Robert felt like they were incentivized to not house them.
When I first got here about 2.5, 3 years ago, the building that I live in was gutted and there was a fence around it. They didn't want to let me in because I don't have a disability rating, so I don't have any income. So they didn't want to let me in because I didn't have income. But they didn't want to let Josh in because he's at 100%. So who's the housing for? There's a lot of homeless programs here at the VA, but nobody wants to go through those programs because you can't drink, they'll breathalyze you, they'll give you drug tests. So if you're still doing those things, or that's how you choose to cope, you're not going to come here for treatment.
Most unhoused veterans struggle with post-traumatic stress, mental health disorders, or substance abuse, which becomes a barrier for entry in accessing a majority of shelters, complicating the efforts to address homelessness. After years of waiting, Robert finally has an apartment in the newly renovated housing on the West LA VA campus. He's lucky. In 2016, the VA planned to build 1,200 permanent housing units within a decade. But as of early 2024, nearly 8 years into that decade, less than 250 have actually opened.
The dog, I think, he wants to play 90% of the time.
There's plenty of room for them to play outside.
Oh, that's why I love the campus and the dogs for vets is they have a backyard in LA, Yeah. There's an owl that lives in one of these trees. He's hooting all night. Yeah, it's awesome. It's great. So like I said, that's the Rob Brennel's bedroom because if it wasn't, if it wasn't for him, the bed was out here. So what we did was we put the bedroom in here, and then I got a wobbly and so I don't have to make my bed. But so this is
I described that for people who don't know that.
So if you're in the military, if you're in the Army, they issue you this blanket, and out in the field, it's actually probably one of the most comfortable things you'll ever have. So it was really cool to get this from the VA. Rob had a little prayer for homeless vets, so they gave us all this stuff. But the bed and.
Can you fit in this bed? I feel like this is too small for you, dude.
No, but I mean, I was living in a tent in my RV, so it's almost like. And took it. Come here, come to sleep. And this is like his. He loves it. Come here, buddy. Come here. Go to sleep. Come on. Yes, you're a good boy.
Oh, so
what? Oh, yes. Yeah. So for me also, it's been hard learning how to stay clean.
Yeah.
I've been like waking up, drinking coffee, trying to clean the apartment in the morning because it gets so messy. But I love it. It's great. No, even in the RV, I never had running water, power, brushing. Actually, just thank God, one of the organizations had a dentist here. I got my first teeth cleaning in a really long time. Having a shower in a toilet, it's a really. So me personally, I take a bath every day, almost 2 to 3 times. I just fill up the hot water because I'm not used to being able to take a shower and stuff. So. I love it. I love being able to be, when I go out, I don't feel like people are looking at me and judging me because I'm dirty or smell bad. So for my personal mental health, it's actually helped a lot. So it's one of those things you don't realize that you're dirty all the time until you're clean. remember him. He lived on Vets Row.
Oh my God, I interviewed him.
Yeah, he passed away from an overdose. He lived here for exactly 1 month.
Remember Derek, the optimistic teddy bear? He died of an overdose only 1 month after getting moved into permanent housing. And while some grumbled about the compact size of the apartments in the new complex, Derek's humility and gratitude forced Robert to look at his situation differently.
It's the saddest thing. I was really upset and bitter about this tiny studio apartment, and I was bitching a lot to Rob. And he got a studio too, but he was so happy. He's like, I love it. He's like twice as big as me, and that made me feel so bad as a person. He made me like reflect on that, and then he died. He was so happy. He got a dog. He wanted to get sober because he had 2 daughters in Florida, and he loved it here. So he was like, I want my kids to see me living here like this. And then he had an accidental overdose, is what they called it. So
I cannot believe that.
yeah, that's why Rob tried to save that guy is really hard, because he took it personally.
We don't know the number of veterans who have died on the streets of LA, some while waiting for housing, others not long after finally finding a roof over their heads. And while I can't put an exact number on it, I do know that it happened at least once. And that's one too many. And as far as the rest of them, they continue to deal with whatever life throws their way. They're resilient and determined. After all, they're veterans. Josh and his brother finally made it into permanent housing, though I still don't know if that's his real brother or military brother. He won't tell me, but I guess there's not really a difference. Josh also adopted a second dog, and when I asked why, he simply said he needed a home. Robert still enjoys his apartment on the West LA VA campus. He said the best part of the campus is all the green spaces so that Tookie can run around. Rob still spends every waking hour advocating on behalf of unhoused veterans. He still doesn't like to be on camera. The lawsuit is scheduled to go to trial in the second half of 2024. As we wait for that case to make it through the courts, thousands of local veterans are still waiting for housing on the West LA VA campus.